Welcome to the McNuttiest Dimension. I'm Chris McNutt. I'm glad that you could stop on by. Take a break from all that other third dimensional stuff that is whipping around willy-nilly in your world. This is a consciousness salon where we can just get into the groove of what it means to be human and all its nuances and fabulous waves of bullshit and wonderment that rip around in this dimension that we call being human. And believe it or not, friends, you chose this trip. And not only did you choose it, but there's a lot of messages coming through that say you were very specific, in fact, incredibly granular in the detail of what you chose as this lifetime. Now, it depends on your level of consciousness, of course, because some stories go that when you're maybe a young soul, new to the human world, it's like being a kid in an amusement park and you bust out of the car and you get your pass and you just start riding rides like crazy and you go from one ride to the next. And it's like, well, I'm on the roller coaster, I'm on the tilt-a-whirl, I'm on the thing that shakes you upside down and the drop of doom. And those are like lifetimes. You just kind of fly through incarnation after incarnation until, you're a few hours into your amusement park journey. You've had cotton candy and a whole bunch of greasy food, and you've been on like 19 rides, and now you're puking behind the corn dog stand because that's how it goes. And some would say that same thing kind of happens to us in the path of human incarnations till we get to the point of not just ripping around, doing whatever we feel like, because there's karmic repercussions to our actions and our choices. And that's one of the reasons we're puking behind the corn dog stand. So we start to take a little bit more care and consideration with sculpting the life. And before we pop in here, we work with guides. We choose the environment that we're coming into. We choose our family situation. We choose our language, our country, the religion, the best experience, whatever the mission is, whatever we've kind of, predetermined that, I'm going in. It's almost like the gym workout I'm going to do today. I'm doing arms, man. I'm doing my calves. It's like I'm coming in here to do a mission and to work hard on something on a soul level. So I've picked this very particular environment and life circumstances, from parents to family members to handicaps, some would say, in order to learn what my soul needs to learn this time around. So if you look at it that way, it's like, holy shit. So you mean I chose everything that's going on, that I am the divine creator being that is actually, this is a creative piece of artwork, my lifetime. I chose it all. And not just that, you pop in with the amnesia, so you forget all the planning you've done, and then you're just, bam, you're in the middle of it. You're riding the roller coaster of the life, the roller coaster that you planned, all the twists and the turns. Most of them, I think that it's left kind of open to some interpretation because this is a free will zone after all. So, but there's something about that environment that we choose to drop into that sets the stage for the rest of our adventures here. So in that context of choosing the life circumstances and the environment in which we plop into in order to provide that foundation for us, those initial experiences for the rest of our lives. My guest today on McNuttiest Dimension is Bob Melvin, a professor emeritus who retired from a career teaching political philosophy at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario. But Bob began his life in the small prairie town of Pearson, Manitoba, just as the Depression was coming to a close. And he grew up on a farm in that endless, secluded, flat splendor and the mind-blowing remoteness that the Canadian prairies delivers in abundance. But Bob left the farm And he got himself an education where he eventually ended up at Western as a well-loved professor of political science for many years, but also with a curiosity for the other realms of being outside that Western academic mind. And he studied learned masters in the range from the Buddha to Plato, and also deepened, as his life went on, into a meditation practice that involved traveling to extended retreats at the Insight Meditation Center in Massachusetts. And Bob still maintains a real mystical Buddhist perspective that is rooted in those initial experiences in the remote prairie landscape of his childhood. And Bob is also the grandfather of my two oldest children, so it gives me great joy to welcome a dear old friend in McNuttiest Dimension. Let's all welcome Bob Melvin. I'm going back to where I come from, where the honeysuckle smells so sweet it damn near makes you sick. I used to think my life was humdrum, but I sure did learn a lesson that is bound to stick.
My first remembrances really were I don't know how old I'd be. I might have been 3, sitting out on a concrete step in front of this old farmhouse, and wild geese going over. And they were low in the sky. They were looking for a place to feed or to nest down for the night, some water source. And the sound of them was absolutely awesome. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them were talking, not just a few. But those mammoth flocks that would come over, one of my earliest memories.
Do you remember it as a peaceful time?
Yes.
Was it happy?
It was happy. It was peaceful. It was filled with a kind of power of adventure.
It's like you grew up in a bit of a monastery, or you grew up in a meditation retreat.
Exactly, and my life pattern as a kid. I don't know how old I was, but we had this giant barn on the property, and it had an upstairs that was the loft area was maybe could have been 40 feet high. So there were big doors way up in the loft, and ladder that would go up there, and a platform. And I don't think anybody knew that I would go into the loft, climb these stairs way up to the top, and lay there on that platform. And there was a door that would open, of course, to the outside. And I could lie there on this platform and look way down into the barnyard.
You must have been able to see 500 miles.
Absolutely, 500 miles at least. And the animals in the front of the barn would look like they were miniatures, from that distance. Swallows in and out, darting away the way barn swallows do. Owl would occasionally come and sit at the end, looking for mice. There were always mice around. Amazing variety of things going on. Pigeons cooing, I remember, is one of the gentlest sounds. Well, doves, they're doves. That was my preserve. But I daydream up there. I have all these wild imaginary things going on.
And it was fairly solitary outside of your family. Like you were out on the farmland, miles from the next farm and town, and any kids your own age.
Yeah. I had a real period as a kid of having my own time, my own space. I never played much with my brother, ever. I just came to that realization recently that we never really did. I had a cousin who was the same age as I was. We were in the same grade, and they lived less than half a mile away. So we would get together and play. And we were good friends and still are. Like best friend Don Melvin, you know. I mean, there's no hesitation about that.
Did you have relationship with the nature around and
Yes.
the other? Was there any kind of wildness, or was this all just sort of like farm animal and?
There was a wildness. There was a wildness. I never really separated the material and the spiritual until later, and that came through Christianity, likely. But to me, it was all just natural. But there sure was a sense of there being something in the air, you know, that was some invisible presence. I think I was always maybe aware of some invisible presence.
Did it feel like the Christian God you were being taught about, or did it feel like something else?
It felt like something else. Like, I don't know what you'd say. Just the spirit of things, the feeling of things. I thought that animals had a like horses, real something about them. They weren't just dumb animals. They were smart. And Father would remark on that from time to time. He would say, "No, don't take everything away from these animals. They're pretty. They know a lot. They know a lot." Yeah. And he was the first one that ever mentioned crows as being really smart. Pay attention to crows. That they were really smart. Yeah.
What do you remember about church in that first, those first Christian teachings, and how did that feel in sort of your heart and soul?
I don't think I felt that much. I never thought much in terms of religion and categories of that. We did go to church. We went to a kind of Sunday school, but it didn't mean much to me then. It did later. I went through a period when I was, maybe about 11 or 12 when I thought about being a United Church minister for a year. I never mentioned that to anybody. And it passed when I started to get interested in girls.
But before that, did you feel some deep...
I did. I felt some deep spiritual presence. And of course, when I say that, I'm using my modern words for it, but I don't know what I would call it then. I knew that there was something going on in the world besides what I could see. Animals give you that feeling sometimes. But the presence just of sitting up there on that loft, I'll never forget it. It was a turning point in my life. That you weren't alone. That there was something going on. That this was a big trip. This was something pretty interesting.
Now, when did you first get a taste of, say, alternate spirituality? Like you grew up in the Christian church out in the middle of the prairie. When did you get a first awareness that there was just other ways of thinking about things that wasn't that Christian model?
I don't think it occurred to me in the early years when I was spending a lot of time alone on that platform in the high loft barn, of categorizing it in any way particularly.
I used to go down to that station every evening just to watch the Pullman train come bombing in, and then one night that great temptation got the best of me and drove me to a life of sin. So you leave Pearson and you go off to school in Brandon, and
Right.
you're taking just general BA
Yes.
with
Yes.
focus on political science.
It wasn't until I was well into college that I realized that political philosophy was something that I really dug, that really appealed to me.
Were there any particular philosophers that really got their hooks into you?
I liked Plato from the beginning. There was something about him, Rousseau as well, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And it was the common man with Rousseau. With Plato, it was the idea that there were other ways of thinking. There was a higher dimension that Plato was always talking about, that somewhere where wisdom lay, there was something. And I was somehow given to thinking that way, that there were higher ways of thinking. At first, I associated that with religion.
That the higher ways equaled God in some way.
Something to stretch for, beyond the human bondage, beyond war and anger and greed and hate and that kind of stuff. That there was another way to live that wasn't cast down, burdened with the emotional stuff that we just seemed immature to me.
So with Plato, you had this first concept for you that wisdom and these other realms, maybe other dimensions, something separate than just this Christian model of earth and heaven and God.
Yes, it was a relief, because I struggled with Christianity. The idea of authority, I couldn't get a lot of it. The organized part of Christianity I couldn't handle. As I mentioned, I had a notion of going into the church as a minister when I was a kid, because it somehow appealed to me. It was some different thing, and you got up there and you talked and you made up lectures, and it was my idea of, from sitting there in the choir watching the preacher go at it. I kind of liked that idea, and I didn't mind going to church for that reason, that sometimes you might hear something interesting. This guy might say something interesting. There weren't many women then as ministers. There came to be quite a few later. But I thought, okay, that's pretty cool.
He commanded quite the audience. It was quite focus that he had for that hour on a Sunday morning.
Oh yeah, they couldn't do much else. It was church after all, and you weren't supposed to cough or. That one of the problems we had sitting in the choir was Father would go to sleep in church, and then he would snore, or he would start talking in his sleep. It was always risky. Mother was always horrified sitting in the choir. Of course, my older brother and I and mother were in the choir all the time. Younger brother Brian when he got old enough to go to church, he was to keep Father awake. So that was his job. And he did a pretty good job, but yeah.
So when you started digging into Plato, as you said later, as a prof and a teacher, what did you start to discover about Plato?
Oh, I thought that he was not well understood. I thought he was saying something a little bit different than what they got caught up on, in a way. That there was much more of a humanist about him, although there was obviously that old Greek patriarchal kind of attitude. Like there was hardly ever mention of women in Plato's stuff, because women in Greek society were, they were just appendages of the male dominant position.
But he has a bit of a mystical side to him.
Yes,
doesn't
he did. Oh, that was part of what drew me to him. Oh, very fundamentally, there's another world to Plato than this world. There's a mysterious kind of world of forms. There's in the myth of air, he talks. Air is somebody who has died, but he's sent back from heaven to tell people what's up there, and he talks about how we choose our own lives. That where he went to, everybody picked a lot. I got number 4. Well, you've got number 34. I choose a life before you do. And somebody comes out and they cast all these patterns of lives on the ground. And you can go around and you can see, well, there's a tailor or a policeman or a king or a whatever, and choose the pattern of your next life. That we really do choose our own lives was the gist of it.
And that's more akin to the yogis and the Rinpoches and the lamas.
Absolutely. And that's a connection that occurred to me. That there's a lot more Easternism, Eastern philosophy in Plato than people had realized. Not thorough. I mean, it's not thoroughgoing. It's not got that easy yearning thing of Eastern philosophy where you're drawn into the cycle of the yin and the yang and the unity of it all. Not that yet. There's a contradiction in Plato.
And still logical thinking was very much thought to be the pinnacle of the way that the approach.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
But he was obviously a deep feeler and an experiencer of these realms. Like, did he mention his practice or meditation? Was there ever anything like that? Or was he just talking about what he experienced and could see somehow?
There wasn't much overt talk about it, but he would parade the life of Socrates as his main model. He did it implicitly.
Because he was Socrates' pupil, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
And he taught Aristotle.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. He hung out with these young people that would follow Socrates around. And they were students only in the sense that they kind of hung out. It wasn't classrooms or anything. It was just Socrates out in the marketplace. And Plato was one of these young guys that was just completely drawn to Socrates as a model. And it wasn't just that he was a fast talker and a logical thinker. Socrates was a noted warrior in the Athenian experience. Socrates was, you didn't want to take on Socrates in a sword fight or anything. He had a reputation of being formidable, like utterly formidable. And Plato would use some of the great Greek military people in his dramas to indicate that this was coming right from the battlefield. This wasn't somebody's conjecture about Socrates. It was people who'd fought with him on the field.
But Socrates was also this paragon of this Athenian logical kind of thought and that approach. But there must have also been some transmission there as well. Like the yogis and the lamas, they talk about you just get some mystical transmission. There's words and thoughts and concepts that the guru or the teacher is teaching the student, but there's on a deeper level a transmission of energetics is taking place as well.
Absolutely. And Socrates made no bones about it. There was a voice, he said, that would come to him, and it would deter him from doing something. It would like stop him in the middle of a sentence. It was like he talked about that. He talked about it as a voice that would come into his mind that would never, he said it would never urge him on, but it would just stop him from doing something.
We would call that a spirit guide today.
Absolutely. And he was very clear about that. And he would go and he would get into meditative trances. There was a party at this famous guy Agathon's place. I forget the name of the play. Maybe it's Agathon. And they're sitting around waiting for Socrates. Has anybody seen Socrates? And somebody comes in and says, yeah, he's sitting in a trance in somebody's porch yard. He's just, and Agathon says, just leave him. He'll show up when he's ready. And he's in these mystical states where he's just there, just absorbing it, taking it in. And they knew that about Socrates. That was part of his way. That was part of his way.
Besides logic, that's also sounds like just tapping into some deeper energies of the beyond.
Absolutely. He had both sides going, like the rational, logical side of the mind and that connection.
Yeah, left brain, right brain, or whatever,
exactly.
Head in the heart space.
Exactly. He had them cornered, or they had him cornered. Yeah. After Socrates, I think Plato was around 30 when Socrates was put to death. Well, then he disappeared. Plato disappeared for maybe 12, 15 years. They didn't know where he was. And he never said much about it. But it sounded like he'd been to Egypt. He was going up the mountain. He was really.
And at that time, Egypt was a learned center of the spiritual arts.
Yes.
Similar to what Tibet and India became later. But Egypt was solidly rooted at that time for the deeper arts of connection.
That's where I think it happened with him. Socrates' death was a terrible blow to Plato and some of the others who had been part of the gang that hung out and in the marketplace with him, listening to him or conversing with him. That was like the end of the world to them. That was something they could never forgive the Athenians for, was putting Socrates to death.
I took my hat and $14, and I went through all the troubles of the life that always follows when you're rich and hunting romance. But my hunting days are over, I can tell you that. So you started teaching in the 60s. And so that was a time of a lot of great social change and new ideas. And, also a time when the Eastern philosophies kind of started to settle in, and couldn't quite say mainstream, but they settled into the first world in North America and first world thought.
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream at all when I started, when I was teaching. In fact, I had a curious reputation of being interested in that stuff. At Western, maybe University of Western Ontario was a bit a bit centralist, right wing. But when I came to Western, it was pretty mainstream. I was a real radical on the outside because I did entertain strong interest in these people, and I had crazy people on my reading lists, like Carlos Castaneda. I thought they should read that,
These are the political philosophy students.
Yes.
And you were recommending Carlos Castaneda.
Yes. Yeah, think widely. Don't take it all for granted. And of course, Castaneda has, there's a great similarity with him and Plato. Like there's a mystical side. Castaneda, clearly, I mean, you're in the world of magic, I mean, make the best of it. It's there. It's part of life. Don't dismiss it. It's because it doesn't fit.
And as a refresher for some that may be listening, Carlos Castaneda and the teachings of Don Juan, the Mexican indigenous shaman that he went and studied with, those books started to come out in the 60s as well.
Yes.
He started off as an anthropologist and studying it that way, but he soon became Don Juan's student, and then the books are written from that perspective.
Exactly.
As this neophyte shaman student.
From book 3 starts to really unwind the story. Books 1 and 2 are pretty much as trying to do the anthropological gig, but by book 3 he's the journey to Ixtlan. He's caught in it, and I got caught reading it. I said, yes, that's right. Yes, there is the Nagul. Yes, there is this sense of something beyond out there that's a real force, could be a real force in our lives. And of course, that's in a way, you can bend that to Christianity right away. I mean, if you're not a stuck in the woods Christian, like the real message of Christianity was sky's the limit. Come on, open up. Live.
Jesus was the greatest shaman of them all.
Absolutely, in a way. Yeah, like the Buddha,
Anything Eastern by that point? It
yes.
crept into your...
Yes. There was I was just going to say that. There were Suzuki. There was a small Suzuki book that I had on a lot, and the Tao of Physics came out, and that was an interesting. There was a couple of chapters in the Tao of Physics that was really, really good, really good. Richard Allport, Be Here Now.
Ram Dass.
The first chapter of Ram Dass, where he talks about his own journey. I didn't really have that on the reading list because it's a big, expensive thing when you buy it. And there's only that little first part that I thought was relevant. I never even read most of the last part of it. But that's a good thing for students to read, because there's a Westerner that actually makes this trip, and it just turns him right upside down. Yeah.
So as the molder of young minds, as you were a young professor at the University of Western Ontario, did you see that as your role? You were going to try to not necessarily flip minds upside down, but just broaden perspectives.
Yes. That was my idea of education, University of Education in particular. And that seemed to be a useful way of going about it, like of trying to turn the corner, When you pick through Plato and even Aristotle in places.
Did you find yourself doing that, seeking out these sort of mystical nuggets or paragraph or two within Plato and other places, and then presenting them to your students?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'd start every lecture with little snippets of quotations from people, just to kind of set the stage. No, I'm afraid I went boldly about the business of trying to awaken that get the idea there that there's more to this than meets the eye. Come on, let's think. Let this Western drivel we've been brainwashed in, let's look through that. Let's look outside of that stuff. Yeah.
When did the Eastern spiritual teaching start seeping into your own life and practice?
Well, at the same time as I started to do it, to read this stuff in class and use it in class. Early on. I don't remember when I started to meditate, but it was a long time ago.
Likely back before meditation was mainstream and popular.
Yeah. Yes. And again, it happened through odd ways. Like there was a group called Ananda Marga that were a kind of a radical beat drums and meditate and chant group, and I hung out with them when they were around and hung out with anybody that was into those kinds of things.
Something different.
Yeah. When I was in England that time, a couple of years in England, I went to all those offbeat things that I could find. Like Findhorn was a big thing then. The way they lived communally and stuff, it was interesting. I was taken with it. Yeah.
And those were some new ideas coming forth at the time.
Damn right. Yeah. Good ideas. They didn't always work. Communal living's not for everybody. Shit.
I met a gal in Kansas City, and she winked at me and asked me if I'd like to step around, and I said, yep, that's what I'm here for. Then she said she'd take me to the hottest spots in town. She mentioned things she'd have to fix up, so she took my $14, but there must have been a mix-up. She's been gone since Thursday evening, and I have a hunch I'll never see that gal no more. So then what happens to you as you start to meditate and bring that practice into your life on a regular basis?
Well, it was pretty interesting. It was fundamental in a way. Relaxing, I think, is basically what meditation does to me. Your mind isn't chasing all the whirling stuff.
Or if it is, it's just noticing it, sitting at that place of not engaging with it or having business with it.
That's right. It's there. You're not going to get rid of it. I mean, the mind's going to chatter. It's the way it is. That's what we're stuck with, chatter mind. But just ignore it. It's you don't have to go with it. Watch it. Just watch it. As the Zen people, the Zen people, I think, are, in the end, I've come right back to them. I think just watch it. Just be patient and watch it. It's doing its job. It's not. You don't have to be upset about it or excited about it. Just that's the way it is. Yeah. And I think at times it'll slow down. If you just watch it, it does tend to slow down.
But you had a calling to do more. This was growing within you.
Oh, yes.
It wasn't just, I'm just meditating and observing my thoughts.
Yes.
This is, you felt that sparking, deeper seeking?
Yes. I don't know how it came onto me. I would be delighted to be able to revisit those years and find out just exactly what it was that led me to actually go down and join one of their sessions.
And this is the Insight Meditation Center in Massachusetts.
Yes. Joseph Goldstein and Oh, I forget the other two that set it up.
Sharon Salzberg.
Sharon was there quite a lot too. And the third guy wasn't.
Jack Cornfield.
Jack Cornfield. He had his place out at on the West Coast.
Yeah, Spirit
by
Rock.
then. Yeah, Spirit Rock. He was there briefly for one occasion when the three of them were there. It was kind of a reunion, 30 years maybe or something since they set it up. I don't know what it was, but the three of them were there, and it was interesting.
What was that experience like to be immersed in, the deeper side of these teachings? Because they spent some time working in, they come from the Thai school of things, of the real Theravada Buddhism. They had some serious training, and I think it's wonderful what they've done to kind of bring it to the Westerners, kind of put it in this digestible sort of way that the Western concepts could kind of latch hold of it.
Oh, sure. I think it was an awesome undertaking that worked, frankly. I mean, there were the Krishnamurtis. There was the odd kind of guru figure that would be there, which were interesting too. I mean, I had experiences with Krishnamurti, which were good. But he was, some of those folks, there's an arrogant side to them too that you never get in their books, but you see it when you're in their company for a while somehow, and you say, there's something wrong here. He's not as pure and clean as I thought, the way it turns out. But that's pretty interesting too, to learn that a lot of your preconceptions about these things are completely wrong. Mind you, we can't help ourselves. We have to sort of place the thing and give it a context, but
I think it's one of the great lessons that all spiritual seekers find, that the gurus are human, and that we build them up in our minds that, these archetypes of the Buddha who never did anything wrong. And then we expect this from our teachers, but no, they're humans. They got shit they're working through too.
Absolutely.
And it comes to the surface. In fact, when you do this deep spiritual work, that's when all the shit comes out.
Starts to happen. That's right. And people like Joseph would emphasize that when you got into these, when you got to see him personally. There's quite a bit of a difference. Well, obviously, he's not out on the main stage talking generally. You're talking to him individually for the 15 or 20 minutes that you have, and things are a lot more pertinently personal. Or can be. He was never very personal about stuff. I could ask him questions about things, and he'd deflect it right back to me, of course. So he didn't end up wasn't like going and getting a lecture. I had to do the talking.
I love a Ram Dass story that he tells about meditating with Joseph Goldstein, and having some, crazy mystical experience, as Ram Dass often did, like went off to some realm of the Buddha lokas or something, and he just had this crazy experience. And then he told Joseph Goldstein about it. He said, "Oh my God, this meditation was amazing!" Like, he described it to him, and then he said, Joseph Goldstein's response was, he just sort of nodded and went like, yeah. Now get back on your cushion and observe your breath.
I know. Very practical. Very practical.
Yeah, that's just an experience that, rises and passes away. You went off to the Buddha Loka and, you saw these devas and danced with them, but that too shall pass.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There was a stubborn sense of not straying from reality with Joseph, which I enjoyed.
And you spent some long stretches there.
Yes. Yeah. 3 months was about the longest I spent there. I did spend 5 months in retreat on the West Coast with Lama Drime. And he was in retreat at the same time, so I never got to see him. But it was a really, really good experience. Yeah, 5 months of not talking and being in a little tent, and there was a shed there that I used that somebody else had put up as a meditation spot. Just a chair and a window would keep the bulk of the flies, mosquitoes off you.
And that's the experience that is people going to the Himalayas and just going into a cave or just building some little hut up in the hills somewhere to be close to the guru or the master.
Yeah.
And that's what they tell them to do from, time began. Just, go build yourself a little something and just sit.
Just sit. That's right. Just sit and watch. Yeah. Just sit and watch. Don't worry. Just sit and watch. Don't expect anything. That was the big teaching of Joseph. And it is, I just was reading a Suzuki thing. Don't expect anything. I mean, that's what we're looking for, is to get rid of expectations, because it's expectations that link us to the next moment. If we're not expecting, then we're free. We're not on the train anymore. Yeah, that's funny, but it's true. I think it's true.
Was it tumultuous times, like in your inner being? Was these long retreat times?
No.
Did you find it peaceful, or was it kicking up all kinds of stuff?
I found it peaceful for the most part. There were some occasions when it would be difficult, and that would be that you would be the mind would be coming at you with stuff that you'd sooner have forgotten. But part of, that's the thing. Release your energies, because a lot of your energies are being used to keep that stuff under cover. You don't want that intruding anymore. I guess I got to the impression that a lot of meditation is just to learn to let that stuff go, Well, we got to let it go, or it'll choke us.
Let go of that layer that's kind of suppressing. That
Absolutely.
Subconsciously, we might not even know is there.
Absolutely. We don't know it's there consciously, really, I don't think. But I hate that word conscious and the unconscious and the superconscious on it, but we got to put words to it to try to explain what it is we're trying to talk about. So we're stuck. Because words are, as Thomas Hobbes said, words are a poor man's counter.
When I get old and have a grandson, I'll tell him about my romance, then I'll watch his eyes pop out. The chances are he won't believe me. And he'll do the same damn thing when he grows up, no doubt. So I got a concept I want to throw at you.
What's that?
You mentioned, Plato and his description of us choosing our lot in life and kind of choosing what we kind of come into. And you said there was cast some numbers and it was just like 4 and 34 and that sort of thing. But others describe it as being a lot more specific than that when we're on the other side choosing to come in here, it's a lot more granular than just, say, a profession. So, with a bit of that idea, if you look back at your life now, as somebody who gravitated towards meditation and those sorts of philosophies yourself, you chose on some level to plant yourself on this bald, flat prairie out in the middle of nowhere as sort of your start in life, as that which, set that foundation for you to go off and explore. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are there and how...
It was a gift. It was a gift. And I can't explain the source, but that beginning to me was like a gift. Here you go, Bob. You're in with simple people. Your mother's been a teacher. Your dad's just a simple farmer. You grow up in this part of the prairies that's still horses and wagons, and you're coming into these old Model A cars, and they run better than the Model Ts did, and that was like a gift to me. And a little one-room school, my God. That little one-room school, Unola, it was called. I don't know the origin of that word at all. Unola School was the center of this little rural community. That's where people went to church, they went to school, everything happened there. You voted there, everything happened at Unola School. And that was my life. That was my early life. Often in the summer, going to school, we'd go in this horse and wagon because the roads were too full of water and mud and stuff, and you get stuck and you'd never get to school in time. Horse could go around it, and through the bush and stuff. It was a very rural beginning that I just cherish. I'm just so grateful for it. It was slow. It was measured. There was no anxieties about it. If you didn't get to school in time, who gave a shit? I mean, nobody cared. Lots of people didn't get to school on time. It was great. It was great. Small town prairie opportunity was the joy of my life, McNutt. It really was. I can't imagine a context any more suited to a dude like me than that.
So maybe you picked it from beyond. Maybe it was a choice when you were dropping in here. It was the perfect spot. You wanted the most peaceful, mellow spot on earth, and you picked the Manitoba Prairie.
Could have been. If there's anything in Plato's idea of choosing the pattern of a life, cast them out on the ground, and you have so long to go out and look at all these lives on the ground, and you pick a pattern of a life, and away you go. Yeah, I got a good one. I got a good one. But the key to choosing a pattern of a life is that it depends on how you lived the last one. That's the ace in the hole. So it's the guy that's very cautious, and he's not in any hurry, and he looks them all over and takes his time. And
this was in Plato's teaching.
Yeah.
Kind of rudimentary description of karma.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, there's no shortage of that in Plato. Oh no. Past lives are there. I mean, it's the whole thing is we're going round and round. Yeah. The doctrine of knowing to him, when you know something, it's recollection. You recollect it from a previous world, previous lives. I never realized until I was well into teaching Plato the extent to which that was a foundation of the teaching. It was like Eastern philosophy, where we've been, we go round and round. There's so much of that in Plato. The East and the West really do come together in him, because all that rational kind of argumentative stuff is very Western.
And your own balance within yourself. Do you see yourself as this blend of the East and the West? Are you got a little bit of both going on, and you've had the ability to be, an academic and also a meditator, all at once, and explore Plato and Carlos Castaneda, as well as Hobbes and, Descartes? Do you find that you've now lived a life exploring both sides?
I guess when I think of it, I don't think of that, McNutt, until you raise it that way. But yes, I've been very fortunate that way. Started university and I never got out. I had no intention of that happening, and absolutely took me by surprise. It just happens that was the way it worked, that's all.
How's your heart and mind feel at this point in your life?
Oh, at ease. At ease. Yeah. Pretty much at ease, I'd say.
Do you feel like there's any more exploration left to do, or that you're seeking to do?
Oh, God. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yes. I would love to have a period of just having a retreat, meditative retreat, of just not talking for 3 months, or just sitting for 6-8 hours a day, just sitting. I've got a real yearning.
It's still calling you. That.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why you popped in on the prairies. Maybe you've been doing this for lifetimes.
Maybe I've got to go back there for a year.
You still have a yearning to sit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Sitting in that Zen, simple way, just observing.
As simple as it comes is good for me. That's all I want. Yeah, that's all I want.
Just observing the mind and just letting it be.
Just watching it, just smiling at it, if you can. No, not really showing any emotion. You want to be as bad. Hell with it. I mean, sure, we don't need to try to rid ourselves of anything. I mean, in the end, come on, we're fine. We're good.
Well, Bob, I hope you find the long sit that you desire, that you're still seeking. And it's been a pleasure to have you here to chat about all things today.
Thank you, McNuttiest. It's great to hang out with you. Anywhere, anytime.
But he can't say I didn't warn him. But what will happen if he runs into that city gal? Gosh darn, I'm going back to where I come from, where the mockingbird is singing in the lilac bush. Special heartfelt thanks to Bob Melvin for being the guest today. And also special thanks to his daughter, Michelle Melvin, my ex-partner, mother of my 2 oldest children, who taught me that song. She used to sing it while we drove in the car when our oldest son, Zach, was young and he was wailing. She sung that and other prairie ditties from the same era, time frame, that Bob used to sing to her, because he talked about being in the church choir, but he was also in barbershop quartets in and around Pearson, Manitoba in his youth. I don't know the name of that song, but it's an old prairie ditty from that era and neighborhood. If you want to connect, it's always great to hear from you. McNuttiest is all you need to know. I'm McNuttiest on Facebook, McNuttiest on YouTube, McNuttiest on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even though I'm hardly ever there, though I'm turning a corner into TikTok, let it be known, with the other 8 billion people on the frickin' planet. But and McNuttiest.com for all the podcasts and other stuff going on in the world of the McNuttiest dimension. It's always great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Chris McNutt. Thanks for checking out the McNuttiest dimension. We'll catch you next time.